I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, I'm talking about winning hearts and changing minds. Now, I can't think of the phrase winning hearts and minds without thinking about, no, not military exercises, but Molly Weisenberg's wedding cake. Molly Weisenberg is the author of Orangette, the food blog, which also has the best waffle recipe in the world. But this is the best flourless chocolate cake you have ever had. Now, weddings are also uppermost in my mind because my oldest daughter is getting married in 6 weeks to the man that she's been with for 10 years. And they're getting married in a covered bridge and then in a mansion, and we are so excited about it. So that's going to come up a little bit later. But the instigation for this episode was that I picked up this book called Switch at a little free lending library while I was waiting for a friend. It's by Chip Heath and Dan Heath, and it's about how to change things when change is hard. What we're trying to change is the global economy to make the world so that every community can take responsibility for itself. That's a little bit hard. So I want to apply the things that they're doing and look at whether there are ways that we can use those tricks too. Let's look at this. I also started reading a sci-fi book called Providence by Max Berry, and I wanted to read the introductory quote. Providence is wiser than you, and you may be confident it has suited all things better to your eternal good than you could do had you been left to your own options. That's from John Flavel. That's a very similar concept to what I find in A Course in Miracles, that there's a way of working with circumstances, that circumstances are how I see the direction that I should be going. I'm always looking at a situation and saying, okay, how could this possibly be better than what I would have planned if I had had my own options? I think during this time when things are spinning so fast out of control that if I didn't have my finger on the pulse, I would almost think that they were standing still because it's hard to even see the motion, that there's so many different things that are going crazy right now. So I think we really need to stay in touch with this concept and to look for it in our own lives, because the only person you can ever prove anything to is yourself. So in your day, look at, okay, this is not what I thought it was going to be. Is there a way that this turned out better? That's, I think, the evidence that we need to be paying attention to. What Switch looks at are different psychology studies and how those can help us inform change. I don't always agree with the kinds of change. As a matter of fact, I think these techniques are being used on us right now. But I think we need to understand how these tools work, both for our own protection and also so that we can use them. It's not a bad thing to figure out what helps people change their minds. What matters is, what's the purpose to which you're using that? The first study they look at is one in which people are going in to see a movie, and on their way in, they're given a bucket of free popcorn. And some of them are a medium size, which is still huge, and some of them are gargantuan. So it's all more popcorn than anyone can actually eat. But the popcorn is terrible. It's 5 days old. It tastes like styrofoam. And they ask people if they'll stay and give them some feedback on the way out. So on the way out, they collect those bowls. Some people complain so much they want their money back and forget that it was free. But they weigh the different containers of popcorn. And what they found is that those who had the larger size ate 57% more, even though no one finished it. So the conclusion that they come to is that when you think you have a people problem, a lot of times what you have is a situation problem. That people with smaller containers eat less. It's not that some people are gluttonous and greedy, it's really the situation they've been put in. I think this is a really important thing for us because what the premise of my book is that people are inherently good. We all want to do the right thing. And when we behave badly, systems are to blame. So we're looking at how can we change these systems. And to do that, we need to be able to give people credit that if the situation is different and the system of rewards and inhibitions is different, people will do what we would do in that circumstance. The second study that they cite, people walk into a room that is permeated with the smell of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies, of which there is a bowl still warm right there. And then there's a bowl of radishes. And half of the people are told, we need you to eat at least 2 of those chocolate chip cookies, but don't touch the radishes. And the others are told the opposite. So people are left alone. They watch them. Everyone does exactly what they're told. And then they come back in the room and they say, okay, well, we're going to do this other study to see whether college students are better at this test than high school students. And they give them a maze. And it's a maze that is actually unsolvable. But they have a lot of sheets that they can do of traceable paper, and they see how long they spend on the maze. What they found is that people who had had the chocolate chip cookies ended up spending 20 minutes or more on the maze trying to solve it. But those who had the radishes gave up in about 8. The conclusion from that is that willpower is an inexhaustible resource. That if you are holding on so tight for one thing and then you get to something else, you just get to a point of saying, I can't do this. I'm already at a point of using up all of the willpower that I have. So it's not laziness. It's another thing that I think really pertains to our current circumstances because it looks as if people are lashing out, as if there is a sense of anger towards others in all of the different situations that we're in. But really, those are people who have given up so much because right now in our circumstances, everyone has given up so much during the pandemic, contact with the people they love, social occasions. They have been made so afraid and kept at that level for so long that there's an exhaustion that's set in. And I think that's something that we should be paying attention to also. Next, they look at how do you change direction. And I think changing direction is an important way to look at it because it's always that first step in a different direction where you have to admit to yourself that you've been spending all this time going the wrong way, and you stop and you turn. That's the hardest. Once you take the first step in the right direction, you feel good. There's a reward to it. You know that you're getting where you want to go. So it's not that we need to accomplish the goal, I think. I think we just have to get to that point of changing direction. In order to do that, they look at what could be seen as the superego and the id in Freudian terms, but what they say is it's like the mind is the rider, but the emotions are the elephant. And the elephant has a mind of its own. The elephant has the energy, has the drive, is going to make things happen. But the rider can be paralyzed by trying to get through all the different consequences of all the different choices. And so, if you want to get both of them working together, you need to give the rider very clear directions of short steps that are going to get it where you want it to go. And you need to motivate the elephant. So let's look at how that pertains to what we're trying to do. In order to motivate the rider, what they say you want are small, attainable goals, things that are small wins that you can look at and say, all right, we already have this success. And that if you have a head start of knowing that you're partway to the goal already, then it makes you feel motivated to keep on going. These are two brothers, and something that their dad would say is, you don't want milestones, you want inch pebbles. Now, the thing about system change is that you can't change anything without changing everything. So it's not something that you can say, well, let's model it here really small. And people are always wanting to do that. It's a question that I get all the time. How can we implement this? How can we jump over all of that system change? Because we don't think that's going to be possible. And let's just make this happen on a small scale. You can't do it. But what you can do is figure out a way to design it and have the design be your success. Have the different systems that you're looking at be something that's in your model where you're borrowing from other people. One of the examples they give is a sales team where one of their requirements was that they had to give credit to other people. I think that that should be built into our computer simulation of our design, that you get credit for up to a dozen people whose ideas you've stolen and kludged into your own, and that you get credit for anyone else who steals your ideas. So that way, we're forcing collaboration. Although I want to take back that word forcing, because I think that's also where we get stuck. We get stuck with, you're not going to make me do that in my community, and we see things as being imposed. Now, there's a formula for foundationally how it needs to work in order to have a system where you have the resources to be able to build your economy. And those are things that really can't be changed. But within that, the look and feel of how it works is going to be up to you. One way to do this, I think, is by presenting options. This has been a learning experience for me, planning a wedding with my family, because I am not good at collaboration. As my ex-husband used to say, I do not play well with others. And so that's something that I've had to learn, that when I let go, things actually often turn out better than what they would have if I had been in charge of them. And the way that I've been looking at it now is to say, okay, here are the different options, and here's the cost benefit, pros and cons of each one. Now, which one do you want to choose? That's what I think we could be doing when we do our designs. I've been presenting designs on reinventing education, for instance, and I want to do the next one on reinventing retirement, which I think is a real emotional issue to those of us who are later in life, and I think also to those who can't even imagine having a future and getting to the point where we're at now. And I think we need to be reinventing healthcare. And I'm going to put Maria in Australia on the spot here with her wonderful new organization that she is on the board of. I think something where we're taking my economic system and saying, how do we want to use this to reinvent healthcare? And how can we get the most amount of caring going with the least amount of excess cost from the outside? Because what we do for ourselves has no cost. What we do within our community and how we take care of each other doesn't have a cost. So we need to maximize that and minimize what we're dependent on from the outside. And I think that that could be an exciting thing. There's a question that Steve Kirsch has posed on his blog to say, when have you been effective at red pilling someone? And post it in here so that we can all learn from your technique. Now, in the first place, I think red pilling someone is arrogant. The idea that we've got the answer, we're the blue pill people, we see the truth, we know everything, and they're deluded, is not going to win any hearts and minds, because it starts out from the position that you don't have anything to learn from someone else. The technique that I used back when my kids were young and I knew a lot of what was happening in the world that no one really wanted to hear about, that was making everyone feel guilty when I would talk about, for instance, the child slavery in our chocolate. And what I did was I started this thing that you can still find on the internet called Food in the Hood at foodinthehood.org. And I put on dinners. They started out where we would make soups and breads from a friend, and then desserts, and we would give them to people and they would donate whatever they wanted to whatever our charity was for that week. And then we started doing full-blown dinners, and I had my youngest daughter, Cassandra, and her two friends, Fatih and Jasmine, who were all in junior high at that time. And they would study up. We would meet every Monday and watch different videos, and they would present whatever the issue was, whatever the charity was that we were going to be supporting that week. And then people would donate. And what I found is that because their behavior preceded what the issue was, they had already identified that they were people who cared about this issue, because they were here, they were eating my delicious food, and they were listening to these young people, and they already felt like that was an issue that they were on the right side of. So talking about it was something that they were good with because it didn't arouse guilt. They already had identified as people who cared about that issue and were doing something about it with their donation. I think this is something that's been used against us in this. We're already modeling this behavior by the wearing of the masks, by things that we've already done, like the vaccines. And then we have this cognitive dissonance that says, I don't want to believe that I did something that didn't make any sense. I made all these sacrifices. I don't want to believe that those sacrifices were in vain. And so the minds follow the behavior. I think that's something that's been used against us, but I think it's also something that we can use. That if we can create a system where people are engaging with the ideas and are engaging in the planning process, then I think we can move people into saying, well, yes, of course, I want this kind of system. So when you're looking at trying to change minds, my formula, which some of you may have seen me use when I'm in different comment threads and someone is coming at me, is that first I compliment, then I ask a question, and then I put in an opinion if I must. But sometimes I can get away with just the first and second and still get that person to start listening to what I'm saying in a different way. When we present these options, I think we need to be asking people, when was a time that you really felt great about the health care that you got? And what were the components of that? What were the things that made you feel happy about this encounter that you had in education, or even in a retail store, having someone helped me, an actual real person help me plan my deck and my pagoda. That was such a deep sense of community for me. It doesn't take much. There's little things where when I'm working on my house, for instance, I'll get reconciled to the fact that things are just always going to get worse, that things just keep falling apart, and that I can barely keep up with how fast they're falling apart. And then I need to have just something little like the refrigerator that had been leaking water for years, and then find out that it was something simple, that it was just a clogged drain, and that this thing I had been living with and mopping up and defrosting the iceberg in the freezer every couple months didn't have to be that way. That's the kind of thing that I think can make us feel like, yeah, it is possible for things to get better and stay better. We can actually make progress. We can change things. That is something I think we can be doing on a bigger scale once we see that it's possible. And here's your assignment if you choose to accept it. To go out and to see the Christ, the Savior of the world, in every person you meet and say, how can I celebrate this? How can I help this person accomplish what it is that they're in the process of? This is something that I have to say, if you can get the hang of it, it creates so much tenderness, even when people are doing things that are ridiculous and when they're doing things that are beautiful. I just saw an art performance that was called Bandaloop, and it's a dance group from Oakland, and they perform vertically on the sides of walls. And so they did this magnificent aerial ballet that in particular had one scene with two men that was so wistful and yearning, and there was such a poignancy to it. And I thought, there are the Buddhas dancing on the side of the wall. Good job on the belly. That's the thing that I think we can do and make it so that every person, you're sincere and you see that they're going to make this happen. That's how I think we save the world. I think I can only follow this up with what's the best that can happen, and we need to agree to agree. And please, if you're not already, sign up to Substack, because Jack Sirius has informed me that the other third paradigm on YouTube is now gone viral with an episode about the modern obsession with butts. And that's actually about anthropology. But a friend told me a long time ago I should do that I should put out a video that says how to grow your butt and then do my usual thing. He now has more views of that video than Russell Brand does. So we better make sure we're all on Substack. Thank you.